Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Rhys Angulatta and in this series we talk about a few things that I've enjoyed over the last 30 days, talk a bit about them and, maybe you'll like them as well. In this month's episode I'm going to talk about a typewriter, a camera, 2 books and a journal. So, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. First of all, a typewriter. So if you've seen my previous video, you'll know that my wife and I recently acquired our first typewriter. We've been talking about getting a typewriter for a while, but we decided to pull the trigger after I finished watching a documentary called California Typewriter featuring Mr. Tom Hanks. And no, I'm not going to stop using that picture of Tom Hanks because, frankly, it's brilliant. The typewriter in question is in fact this one. This is an Imperial 200 typewriter made at some point in the 1970s in Japan. This particular one came in a really nice blue colour that we both really liked. It has a beautiful tactile feel. Ooh, did the carriage just roll across? And it has these just wonderful tactile keys that are really nice to use, which are really tactile and sort of connect you to the machine in some way. It's really interesting actually. We actually bought this particular model refurbished from a company called London Typewriters, a family-run business that deal in antique typewriters based here in London. So the million-dollar question is, why would I buy a typewriter in this day and age? Well, I think a quote by The Typewriter Revolution by Richard Pult says it best. A typewriter isn't a bad computer. Computers can do countless things that typewriters can't. But a typewriter still has the computer beat when you want a self-contained, secure, lasting physical writing machine. Turn to a typewriter and you'll find yourself focusing on writing, the reason the machine exists. As with everything that me and the wife try to do, the typewriter allows us to write distraction-free and be fully present and conscious in the moment. We're kind of a little old school as well and really enjoy writing thank you notes and writing letters to members of our family and close friends and things like that. So the typewriter really sort of facilitates that. And take it from me, a letter or a postcard that's been written on the typewriter or handwritten and sent through the post means a great deal more to the recipient than just shooting off an email or a text or whatever. If you take the time to pick up proper stationery and really consider what you're going to say, it just means a great deal more to the recipient, and actually it comes across so much more sincere. If this is something that sounds good to you, I would check out one of 2 things. Number 1, California Typewriter, the documentary. I think that's a fantastic documentary for typewriter enthusiasts. And 2, the Typewriter Revolution, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Both of these communicate the benefits of a typewriter way more than I possibly could in a few minute overview. My second thing of the month is a new camera. In a similar vein to a typewriter, I actually picked up a new camera this month. No, this one wasn't digital. I'm still using my Sony a7 II. This one's film, and yes, I'm kind of expecting a lot of people to call me a hipster at this point using both a film camera and a typewriter. So this is the Canon A1, a 35mm manual camera, which naturally takes 35mm film. It was built sometime in the late 1970s, early 1980s, again made in Japan. I bought this from a store in Brighton called Clock Tower Cameras. And originally I was actually looking for the AE one because of the aesthetic. But I came across the A1 when I was doing a bit of Googling online. And actually, even though it's cheaper, it's actually a better built camera and has a few more manual functions than the E1 offers. The limitations of this camera actually allow me to be a lot more mindful with the whole process of taking photos. And actually, it's been really nice because in reality, you only really have 36 shots in a roll of film. So every single shot counts, and every single shot costs money. The camera itself is beautiful, and has a certain amount of heft to it that modern day cameras don't really have, particularly as it's, I think, a full metal body. It certainly feels like a full metal body. All of the movements are really nice, the aperture ring on the lens is really nice, and actually the film lever is really great as well. And when you take a picture, you have that wonderful sound. And actually, this sound is one of my favourite things this month. The camera and the film itself aren't actually that expensive, but I can see how quickly the costs might start racking up. I took my first roll of film to the developers, and it cost about £14 to get the film developed and printed as well. So I may consider actually printing at home at some time, like developing at home, because frankly that's quite a lot of money. But generally it's quite an easy hobby to get into, to be honest, and reasonably inexpensive sort of entry point as long as you're really mindful about what you're taking pictures of. If any of you wonderful subscribers have any kind of experience with film cameras, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know your tips and tricks. My first roll of film wasn't exactly perfect, but hey, it's not bad for a first effort, right? But I'd love to know what kind of recommendations you might have in terms of film as well. At the moment, I'm using a Kodak 200 color. Probably going to try and move to the 100 next. We'll see how we go. But yeah, I'd love to learn what you guys use if you do indeed use film cameras. Lastly, I'm going to be uploading my progress onto Instagram. So if you're interested in following my progress as I go, you can find me at Rhys Angulatta, as with Twitter and everything else on the internet, because how many people have this name? Books! Books, 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 books. Books! So the next thing I've been enjoying this month is actually 2 books. So the first is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. You see that? There you go. By Donna Tartt. And that's been great. And also The Typewriter Revolution by Richard Pult. One thing I particularly like about this, by the way, is the ribbon here being black and red, just like a typewriter. Very cool. They're both remarkably different books. One, obviously fiction, dripping in dark academia vibes. And the other is sort of this quintessential modern guide to typewriters and the culture that surrounds typewriter usage in the 21st century. I've had a lot of fun with both of these books this month actually, and because they're so sort of vastly different, it's been really easy to jump between them and not really have to worry about it too much. So depending on my mood, I might jump into the fiction book or I might jump into the typewriter book, whatever. It's just been nice to read. So the first book, The Secret History, I was introduced to by Jack Edwards, another YouTuber, and his video on dark academia. Dark academia is a movement that I found actually really quite interesting and intriguing. It sort of embodies that old kind of Ivy League school aesthetic, where people are, you know, reading by candlelight and everyone's a moody academic and all that kind of stuff. It's just been really interesting, and this book is sort of one of the key books in that movement, I suppose. It was written by Tartt in the 90s, and if you could, like, the best way of describing it, I'd probably say, is like Harry Potter if Gryffindor were even more pretentious than they already are, and sort of embodied Ravenclaw-esque approaches to things as well. But that's not a negative. So the plot itself is really, really interesting, and the characters are fantastic. It keeps you really engaged throughout. But it's worth noting that the chapters are actually sometimes 100 pages, if not more long, which is kind of difficult to approach sometimes, but you kind of get used to the pacing and you learn where you can stop, and it's not too bad. I've been moving through this maybe a bit slower than I would have liked, but I'm hoping to get through the rest of it this month. I think that'd be great. The second book, The Typewriter Revolution, is really interesting for someone that wants to get involved in the world of typewriters, or even if you just have a vague kind of fascination with typewriters. It goes through the history, it goes through some of the key movements within the typewriter culture within the 21st century, including activism, poetry, art, literature, and things like that. And it also breaks down some of the key typewriters that you might want to pick up if you were looking for an antique typewriter. So one of the reasons I picked this book up was after I had bought the typewriter. I've heard that this book has quite a good area for troubleshooting common issues within typewriters. So I thought having something like that would be really, really helpful around. But I've just learned so much about it, and I'm more invested now in my typewriter than I was when I got it. I use it pretty much every day now, and it's been a really nice change, actually, to disconnect from the digital world and jump into something a bit more physical with, you know, a bit more tactile feedback like a typewriter does. Overall, I'd say I recommend both of these books. They've been fantastic. Not necessarily for the same person though, unless they happen to be interested in both of these subjects. Last thing I'm going to talk about this month is actually a new journal. So over the last month I've decided to move away from a digital journal to a more physical one. There's been a few reasons for that, but I think mainly it's because I really kind of disliked my handwriting. It's shockingly bad, and I kind of wanted to get better with that. It's one of those things that I quite enjoy doing, using pens and writing letters and writing things down, especially day to day, and my handwriting is just so bad that I wanted to improve it. So I've started taking a physical journal with the aims of doing that, basically. This is the one I ended up going with. It's from a company called Beechmore Books, who are apparently London-based. The second reason I wanted to start taking a physical journal was because I wanted something to be able to look back on. Now, with a digital journal, I use Day One personally. It's difficult to be able to go back through and read things because you're just kind of scrolling through endlessly, and sometimes it's sort of hard to get the perspective that you kind of get from a physical journal when you're just kind of going through it and reading it line by line and blah blah blah. The last reason really was because I just started getting a bit concerned about what would happen if Day One went down, for example. I'd lose all of my journals. So I've been a pretty avid journaler for years now. I mean, on and off, to be fair, but this year I've been really consistent. I mean, I would recommend everyone take a journal of some kind anyway, because it's genuinely so valuable. It doesn't really matter what method you use. Obviously a physical journal I prefer now, but you know, if a digital journal works for you, then crack on. But I genuinely think it's really valuable. My other thought process behind kind of starting to gather journals physically is that I'd like something that when I die, my kids can read through. It would just be nice for them to get some perspective on this time of history. When I was in GCSE history or whatever, we had all of these primary sources. And how exactly would they actually collect information to understand what normal people thought about the world in the digital space? If everything's hidden behind passwords, you know, your family are never going to know who you are. So this is my challenge to you, my subscriber base. I want you to try journaling for the next 30 days and let me know if it makes any difference at all to your state of mind. I find it a really valuable place to just dump your mind and start working through. But yeah, that's kind of everything from me. Those have been my favourite things of the month. So just to recap, we had a typewriter, we had a camera, we had 2 books, and we had a physical journal. But that's everything from me. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Again, I love your feedback as always, and it's good to know whether you actually enjoy these at all, because they don't exactly get the best view counts, but I quite enjoy making them, and hopefully kind of in the future it would be nice to look back on and be like, oh, I was really into that. Cool. But yeah, if you like what you see here, hit that like button, lets me know that you're enjoying the content I'm making. If you'd like to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. I upload new videos every Monday at 9 AM GMT. But until next time, ta-ra.